I want to run away every night, but I stay. Why? How can I? Have I finally given up? I, 26-year-old female, have a husband, 30-year-old male, and 2 boys, almost 9, almost 3. I live in a small, southern, country, old-fashioned town. We've been married since 2015, been together since the end of 2012. Everything has been in his name. I'll be starting over fully, like a high school graduate without family to help. I've been a stay-at-home mom since I graduated from high school. My home life is pretty terrible. I don't wake up happy. I go to sleep crying almost every other night. We're basically glorified roommates. He's been on Subutex since 2014. It has torn us apart, physically and emotionally. I didn't want him taking them, so he hid them. Example of that little pill meaning more to him than me and our children. When our son was a newborn, we were getting dressed for Halloween, waiting on him to get off work to take us to my son's very first trick-or-treating. I remember how excited we were and had already made plans the previous night together. Time came for him to be home and he wasn't. I called, he wouldn't answer. I called so many times while I was bawling and trying to keep a crying baby calm enough so I could find out what happened. We weren't fighting, so I thought something happened to him. I was so scared he had gotten into a wreck and died or something. I called all the surrounding hospitals and jails. I called everyone we knew. It was so embarrassing, I was worried sick. He finally picked up hours later and tells me he was done and wasn't coming home because I wouldn't let him take his subs. He left me and our newborn at home, without food and baby water, with no way of going in a town I hardly had anyone in. Luckily, my brothers came to get us. That is one example of how much these little pills mean to him. These pills have stolen my life, our lives. They have turned him into a shell of the person he used to be. The only emotion he shows towards me or our kids is anger. He does not hit us or threaten us in any way. However, I think he is emotionally, verbally harassing us, mainly me. He's angry all the time. He picks fights with everything I say or do, and then turns it around saying I started it. Don't get me wrong, I do start fights about how he treats me and the boys, or when he's drinking too much, or when I think he's taking too much Subutex. The tone when he talks to us is always mean. He talks down to us without realizing he's doing so. He doesn't show any affection except a kiss on the cheek when he's going to work every morning. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I stay with the boys all day, every day. I never get a break except for Saturday nights when they stay with Nana. From about 7 p.m. to 10 a.m. is the only break I get. I've been a stay-at-home mom since 2015. I'm overwhelmed and almost in tears by the time he walks through the door. I've had extreme postpartum depression with both of my pregnancies. I'm still not back to normal 3 years later. When I ask for his help, he'll do it, but in a way that makes me feel guilty. He'll yell, "Well, I've been working all damn day," when I call him out on it or tell him I'm exhausted and just can't handle it right now. He huffs and puffs, and if he's watching them, when I ask him to watch them, he doesn't. Yes, he stays in their general area, but he doesn't watch them. He lets them run rampant and destroy the house. He lets them do whatever they want, just so he can watch his phone. And if he takes them outside, he lets them close to the road. We live near a main highway, or my youngest would be in the front yard and him be in the back. Then I have to come out to watch them because I'm worried about their safety. Everybody thinks he's this amazing father because when we're in front of people, he acts like it. He does the bare minimum and gets praised for it. Meanwhile, I'm doing all the heavy lifting and get no praise, not even from him. He's always on his phone. From the time he walks through the front door, his headphones are in, and he's watching his phone. To the time he lays down at night, he's on it. The boys basically beg for his attention, and so do I. I've begged him to get off his phone many, many times. He gets angry and says, "Well, you get on yours. Why can't I get on mine? I work all day, you don't. I want to relax." And I understand he wants to relax, and some days I'm fine with that, just not every single day. I know he works and I don't. I know his job is hard, welder, but staying at home with kids isn't what everyone thinks it is. It wears on your mental health. It has destroyed my mental health. The rare occasion when I do leave the house, my anxiety is high and I can't even hold a conversation with an adult person because I'm not used to talking to anyone but my boys and husband and my mom on the phone. I'm so depressed it's pathetic. He thinks I'm making it up for his attention, and I wish I was. Our intimacy life is embarrassing. He isn't ever interested unless he needs a quick release. When I ask him to pleasure me, he tries, but it's so mechanical, like a chore. I tell him, I just can't, and we stop. He can only last maybe 3 minutes before releasing. I think it's because of the subutex, because when we were younger, he'd last a normal amount of time. I try to spice up our bedroom life with lingerie and toys, or even asked about a threesome or swinging, which he turns down and nothing works. Nothing gets him excited or aroused. I'm a very adventurous, kinky, used to have a high libido kind of girl. He never looks at me anymore, and if he does, he looks through me. I've starved myself to the point of bones showing, to make myself skinny to try to get his attention. It didn't work. I try looking sexy in my bathing suits when we go swimming. He never looks. Hell, I don't remember the last time he gave me a compliment of any kind. I've sat down and had so many talks with him, explaining what I'm feeling and what we could do to help fix us. But I would need his help, since I can't do it alone. He makes me feel stupid for doing that, so I stopped communicating with him that way. He knows how I feel and does nothing to fix or help it. He doesn't care about anything or anyone. I know he loves us, but I feel like if I was to die today, he wouldn't be sad, but he would be inconvenienced because I handled our home life and he would be annoyed that he had to do it then. I've threatened divorce and actually left for about 5 weeks. Talked to him maybe 2 times while I was away. And it didn't affect him, or at least he didn't show it. When I bring up divorce, his first response is, "Where will you live? You're not taking my car. You have nothing to support you or the kids. So I'll get them. Leave. I'm not keeping you here. Go." For context, he has put everything in his name over the years since I've never had credit, because I've always been a stay-at-home mom since I was 18. I would have nothing if I choose to finally grow a pair and leave. I don't know who I am anymore without him. I had plans for my life, and not one has come to fruition. I hate my life. The only good thing in it is my boys, and I can't even enjoy them the way I should because I'm so deep in my depression. I can't remember what it's like to be truly happy, not the fake happy I show to the outside world. I want to laugh again. I want to go to sleep without tears soaking my pillow. I want to be happy for my boys. I've lost myself long ago, little by little. Every lie, every betrayal, every argument, him making me feel like I'm crazy when he knows I'm not. I'm just calling him out on the stuff he hides. I'm still hurt from the past because he won't sit down and talk it out with me. But he says it happened in the past, so I should just be able to forget about it. He doesn't care to understand that it stole a part of my happiness and changed our marriage. I need closure. There's so much more that I didn't write, but you get what I'm saying. I'm miserable every day. That at night I dream of disappearing with my boys and never looking back, knowing that I will never be able to. I can't go to a lawyer. He controls all the money, and I have to ask for an amount and tell him what that amount goes to. Also, my car has GPS on it, and it's connected to the Ford app on his phone, so he will see that I went, and then I'll be really screwed. Everything is in his name over the years, so I have nothing of my own and no way to save money to leave. I know I'm stuck, and I'm trying to come to terms with it, but this felt so good to get out being, as I don't have anyone else to talk to. I'm forever lonely in this sham of a marriage. I just wish he wasn't this angry shell of the guy I fell in love with, but I'm growing to hate and despise. And I feel guilty for feeling this way. The guilt is eating me alive. Please don't message me, trying to sext me or trade pics. I'm in a terrible marriage, but I'm loyal to him. I respect marriage, no matter how bad it is. However, if you have advice or want to chat about my problems, it's open. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. So, I had to look up Subutex, and from what the internet tells me, it is used for addiction. So, you are loyal to a financially and emotionally hurtful addict? An addict who doesn't care about your happiness or keeping your children safe. He treats you and your children poorly, and you just go along with it because you respect marriage? You cry yourself to sleep and fantasize about leaving, but you don't want to leave? Do you even hear what you are saying? Do you want your children to grow up thinking this is how a man treats a woman? Or even worse, for your children to die when he is watching them? Obviously, you don't love yourself enough to break free, but surely you love your children enough to want to protect them. He will never be the man he used to be. He won't. That person is long gone. The only question is whether or not you love him enough to watch him destroy your children. Comment 2. I grew up with a dad who was an addict and a bitter shell of a man, and a mother who did everything she could to make us a happy family. It was the worst. I have been a single mom since day one. I have worked multiple jobs at a time to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. It was tough, but I am thankful every day I don't have to live the life my mom lived. She finally divorced my dad after 30 years of marriage, and all she can do is regret not doing that sooner. Her life during that time was miserable, and it affected her kids more than she will ever admit to. You have to take care of yourself. You aren't doing your kids any favors staying in this marriage. It will be hard work, but living in a tent would be better than this gilded cage and miserable man you find yourself with. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me. So 2 weeks ago, I decided to take a big step and try to get a job. I thought maybe if I could bring in some money, I could start saving up and eventually leave. I applied to a few places in town and got an interview at a local diner. I was so nervous, but also excited. It felt like a small glimmer of hope. I didn't tell my husband because I knew he would just try to stop me. I managed to get my mom to watch the boys for a few hours while I went to the interview. The interview went well, and they offered me a part-time position. I was over the moon. I thought this could be the beginning of a new chapter for me and the boys. I started working the next day, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of purpose. The job was tough, and the hours were long, but I didn't mind. It was a break from the constant misery at home. However, things took a turn for the worse when my husband found out. I had been careful, but he noticed I was gone for a few hours each day and started asking questions. I tried to lie, saying I was just running errands, but he didn't buy it. He followed me one day and saw me at the diner. When I got home that night, he was furious. He accused me of hiding things from him and not respecting him. He demanded that I quit the job immediately. I stood my ground and told him I needed this job for my sanity and for the boys. He didn't care. He said if I didn't quit, he would make my life even more miserable. I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped. I wanted to keep the job, but I also didn't want to make things worse at home. I ended up quitting the next day. It was heartbreaking. I felt like I had lost the only bit of hope I had. After that, things got even worse. My husband started drinking more and became even more aggressive. He would come home late, drunk, and start yelling at me for no reason. The boys were terrified. I tried to shield them from his anger, but it was impossible. One night, he came home and started throwing things around the house. He broke a few dishes and even punched a hole in the wall. I was scared for our safety. I decided to reach out to a local women's shelter for help. They were very understanding and offered me a place to stay with the boys. I was hesitant at first, but I knew I had to do something. I packed a few bags and left with the boys while my husband was at work. We stayed at the shelter for a few days, and it was a relief to be away from him. The staff at the shelter were very supportive and helped me come up with the plan. But then, I made a mistake that changed everything. I called my husband to let him know we were safe and that I needed some time to think. I thought maybe he would understand and give me some space. Instead, he tracked us down and showed up at the shelter. He caused a scene and demanded that we come home. The shelter staff called the police, but by the time they arrived, he had already left. The shelter staff advised me to get a restraining order, but I was too scared. I didn't want to make things worse. I decided to go back home, thinking maybe we could work things out. But things only got worse. My husband was even more controlling and hurtful. He took away my phone and limited my access to money. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. The boys were suffering too. My oldest son started acting out at school, and my youngest became very clingy and anxious. I felt like I had failed them. I didn't know what to do. I was stuck in this terrible situation with no way out. Looking back, I realized I should have taken the shelter's advice and gotten a restraining order. I should have stayed away and tried to build a new life for me and the boys, but I was too scared and too dependent on my husband. Now I'm back to square one, feeling hopeless and trapped. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I can't keep living like this. I need to find a way out for my sake and for the boys. I just hope I can find the strength to do it. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for letting my insecurities ruin my relationship and pushing my girlfriend away? I, 20-year-old male, am really struggling to make my girlfriend of 6 months orgasm and it is making me feel a bit insecure in the relationship. In bed, I am naturally a giver. Nothing makes me more sexually satisfied than giving another person pleasure. I, while definitely not a stud, have had a handful of intimacy partners previously and have had no issues helping them reach climax. With my new girlfriend, however, I've had no success at all, despite considerable effort. She assures me that she is immensely difficult to make orgasm, saying that it can only be done when she is feeling a very specific way and in very specific methods. She has tried teaching me these methods, but I haven't been able to master them, even though I've tried very hard. She has had one ex who has been able to make her orgasm previously, which lets me know it is possible, just that I can't for whatever reason. It is this which is starting to make me feel a bit insecure. She tells me she enjoys our intimacy activities regardless of the fact that she doesn't orgasm, but she's the first person I have ever loved, and the fact I can't make her orgasm is hurting me a little psychologically, even though I know it's silly. We are usually long distance, and I am staying over for about a month and a half working remotely. We have visited each other for roughly week-long periods 3 times in the last 6 months. I want to make her orgasm before I go home if possible. Just to cross a few of the common things off the list and give more details. We always have long periods of foreplay and teasing the day of before I focus on her female genitalia. We haven't had penetrative intimacy yet due to her wanting to wait, being very, very shy. This is for her own reasons, and I am 100% fine with waiting. I always knew we were going to take it slow, so I don't think I'm putting any pressure on to have intimacy. For reference, we waited roughly 3 months for me to finger her, and I only began giving oral earlier this month. She has not given me oral yet, and we have not had penetrative intimacy. She is nervous about penetrative intimacy, though, as I believe she may have had issues surrounding this before, which she does not want to talk about. I don't believe it is any trauma, although it is entirely possible as she does not like to talk about it. I have given extensive amounts of oral for extended periods of time, 2+ hours, taking breaks and doing other activities as appropriate. Not wearing her out. Wearing me out, though, I struggled to chew it all the next day, which she has clearly enjoyed. Giving body language, which shows it is quite pleasurable, alongside making certain noises. I also routinely finger her and do more non-penetrative acts. While it is entirely possible she is faking this pleasure, I do not believe she would do so, and we have talked about the fact she is not. I 100% believe her. We use toys frequently. She is able to make herself orgasm from a vibrator and has done so in my presence, but only after 15+ minutes of very specific use. A very specific rocking technique that I cannot for the life of me master, and any deviation in the technique over the period will cause her to lose the ability to orgasm. We are both quite comfortable with each other and have very open communication. I don't try anything when she isn't in the mood and vice versa. She has a relatively low libido when I am not around, although this increases a lot around me. Again, this could be faked, I guess, but I don't think she would do that, is doing that. She is bisexual and usually has female partners. The ex mentioned before was female. One particular point of insecurity for me is the fact she has described the previous ex as an aggressive homosexual who knows how to make women orgasm, which kind of made me feel bad, being a straight guy who very much cannot make her orgasm. Although she didn't say it intending me to take it like this, I kind of can't get it out of my head. She can make me orgasm. A lot. And very easily. She's the hottest person I know, and it's crazy the things she can do to me. This is partially why I worry that I can't look after her well enough. I love her a silly amount, and I just want to make her feel as good as she makes me feel. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. A lot of women are chiming in here that they also have a difficult time, and I can relate. I just can't reach orgasm without using a vibrator, and sometimes it may take a bit of time. And honestly, it doesn't really feel that worthwhile for me to spend that time. Enjoyment of intimacy for me is far more about enjoying someone's presence and the way they feel, rather than the orgasm. And performance anxiety is a big issue. I absolutely hate the feeling that a man wants to make me climax, because it will provide a sense of validation for him. and it puts pressure on me to give him that satisfaction, which makes it harder for me, or feeling guilty or self-conscious that it's taking so long. The partners I've had who I appreciated most were the ones who were okay with me not reaching orgasm. Ironically, this made it more likely. But at the end of the day, when I've told lovers that it's not necessary for them to make me climax, I have actually meant it. You shouldn't feel bad or self-conscious or self-doubting. Comment 2. My boyfriend is also very giving. Sometimes we engage in intimacy activities for up to 4 hours straight. I enjoy everything he does, but he can't make me orgasm. The longer he is down there, the more insecure I become about not being able to climax, which makes it harder. What we have ended up doing is he will go down on me for a long while because we both enjoy it. But when we are both ready for me to orgasm, we switch things up. I use a suction toy on myself while he stimulates my G-spot with his fingers or the head of his weenie. In my case, it's a combination of insecurity about the time it takes me to orgasm and conditioning myself with toys over the last 15 years. It can be really difficult for us ladies to climax. A stray thought about the damn laundry can float into my head and ruin the buildup. However, I still really enjoy the process even if I don't orgasm. Just continue to communicate and try not to take it personally. If she thinks you're stressing her orgasm too much, this could make her stress about it and work against her reaching climax. Now for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. So 2 weeks ago, I decided to have a serious conversation with my girlfriend about my insecurities and how I felt about not being able to make her orgasm. I was nervous, but I thought it was important to be honest. She listened patiently and reassured me again that she enjoyed our intimacy activities and that it wasn't a big deal to her. She even suggested that we take a break from trying to make her orgasm and just focus on enjoying each other's company. I agreed, but deep down, I still felt like I was failing her in some way. A few days later, we went out for dinner and ran into her ex, the one who could make her orgasm. It was awkward, to say the least. They exchanged pleasantries, but I could sense the tension. After we left the restaurant, my girlfriend was quiet. When I asked her what was wrong, she said seeing her ex brought back some memories and feelings she thought she had moved past. She assured me that she loved me and that those feelings were just remnants of the past. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being compared to her ex. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what she had said about her ex being an aggressive homosexual who knows how to make women orgasm. It made me feel inadequate and insecure. I started to wonder if I would ever be able to satisfy her the way her ex did. The next morning, I decided to talk to her about it. She was understanding and told me that her relationship with her ex was complicated, and that it wasn't fair to compare myself to her. She said that she loved me for who I was, and that our relationship was different and special in its own way. Despite her reassurances, I couldn't help but feel like I was in competition with her past. I started to overthink everything and became more self-conscious during our intimate moments. I felt like I was constantly trying to prove myself, which only made things worse. My girlfriend noticed my change in behavior and asked me what was going on. I told her that I was struggling with my insecurities and that I felt like I was failing her. She hugged me and told me that I was being too hard on myself and that she loved me for who I was. A few days later, we had a small argument. It started over something trivial, but it quickly escalated. She accused me of not trusting her and being too focused on my insecurities. I told her that I felt like she was still hung up on her ex and that it was affecting our relationship. She got upset and told me that I was being unfair and that she had moved on from her ex. The argument ended with both of us feeling hurt and frustrated. The next day, we decided to take a break from each other to cool off. I spent the day reflecting on our relationship and my insecurities. I realized that I was letting my insecurities get the best of me, and that I needed to trust her and believe in our relationship. I decided to apologize and try to move forward. When we finally talked, she accepted my apology and we agreed to work on our communication and trust. However, things didn't go back to normal. There was a lingering tension between us, and I could tell that she was still hurt by the things I had said during our argument. I tried to make it up to her by being more attentive and supportive, but it felt like I was walking on eggshells. A few days later, she told me that she needed some space to figure things out. She said that she loved me, but that our relationship was starting to feel like a burden. She said that she needed time to think about what she wanted, and that she hoped I would understand. I was devastated, but I told her that I respected her decision and that I would give her the space she needed. During our time apart, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I missed her terribly and kept replaying our conversations and arguments in my head. I realized that I had been too focused on my insecurities and that I had let them affect our relationship. I decided to work on myself and try to become more confident and secure in who I was. A week later, she reached out to me and asked if we could talk. I was hopeful that we could work things out, but when we met, she told me that she had decided to end our relationship. She said that she loved me, but that she needed to focus on herself, and that our relationship was no longer making her happy. She said that she hoped we could remain friends, but I was too heartbroken to think about that. Looking back, I realized that my insecurities and lack of trust played a big role in the downfall of our relationship. I let my fears and doubts get the best of me, and it ultimately drove a wedge between us. I'm trying to learn from this experience and work on becoming more confident and secure in who I am. It's been a tough few weeks, but I'm hopeful that I can grow from this and become a better person. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for insisting my husband include my last name in our baby's name? My husband and I have been together for 4 years and married for almost a year. I am 28 weeks pregnant, and my husband and I were discussing names. My husband is Balkan, so his family never followed the naming tradition I grew up with. And since we've started discussing names, I've become really emotional. I wanted a name that we both like, but would not stand out too much to the country we live in. We have not been finding first names too difficult, or even the middle name. But then I mentioned the last names and how I would like it if we did that. He knew my last names before I got married, but I changed to his last name when we got married. This is because of where I grew up, but most people I knew had 2 surnames in a way. My father's last name was my official last name, but I would often use my mother's last name as well, because it was my middle name in a way, but still my last name. So I had my first name, a middle name, my mother's last name, and then my father's last name. That is not done in his country, where we live now. I moved there when he proposed. I suggested that we could give our baby my last name as a second middle name, like I had. But he acted like I was being ridiculous. He said that our child should have his last name, just like I do. I said that she will still have our last name. She can just have it as a second middle name, if he prefers that. And we won't use it as her last name at all. Because I used to write my name, including my mother's surname. But if he didn't want that, I thought it would be a good compromise. I don't want to be selfish, but I feel like all the names that we both agree on don't really have much of a connection to where I'm from at all. And I'd like our baby to at least have something, since she'll have her father's last name. And the names we both can agree on are definitely much more common where he's from. I was a bit upset, but he told me to stop being so emotional and that it doesn't matter that much. And that I'm always crying since I've become pregnant, which is true. Maybe I'm just being silly, and it isn't that significant. It's just her name. It is true that I've been a bit hysterical since I've been pregnant. It's just a lot. It hurts me a lot, and I don't really know. I just don't like it. I'll probably feel better once the baby is born, but I don't like it now. It feels weird. I don't feel like myself. Because of that, I am often irrational, and it is very likely that this is the case. But it makes me so upset for not much of a reason. It just does. But I don't think he will change his mind. I have talked to him about it, but he doesn't believe it should be any kind of concern for me. And our child would find it weird anyway, because no one else does that. I don't know how to get over it, although eventually I'll have to. But I don't know how. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. The thing about this that is quite sad is the justification you keep using in the replies to justify his point of view. Apparently, you are not allowed to be upset, and that immediately blows up into being irrational and overly emotional. You are crying all the time? So what? There may be a valid reason for that. Pregnancy hormones may be making you more susceptible to having an emotional reaction to all the bull it sounds like you have to put up with on a regular basis. Honestly, it reads like, he is good at making you feel like you're the problem in all of these scenarios. How often does he compromise, OP? Or is it you who always compromises? Comment 2. Welcome to marrying a Balkan where traditional gender roles rule. and patriarchy is strong. He won't budge on this, so you're stuck with it. If he's like the Balkans I know, he also won't accept divorce. Unfortunately, you've made your bed. But for the love of freaking God, stop using gaslighting language. You're not irrational, you're not hysterical. He is literally overriding your wish to include your family names because of his machismo, patriarchal traditions, which don't align with yours, I'm guessing Spanish. Naming conventions. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, a lot has happened in the past 3 days, and it's been pretty up and down of emotions. First off, my husband and I had another argument about the baby's name. I brought up the idea of including my last name again, and he got really frustrated. He said I was being unreasonable, and that I was just trying to make things difficult. I felt like he wasn't even trying to understand my perspective. I ended up crying, and he walked out of the room. It was really tense, and I felt so alone. The next day, I decided to talk to my mother about it. I needed someone to vent to, and I thought she might have some advice. She listened patiently and then told me a story I had never heard before. Apparently, when I was born, my parents had a similar argument about my name. My father wanted to follow his family's tradition, while my mother wanted to include her last name. They eventually compromised, and that's why I have both last names. Hearing this made me feel a bit better, knowing that my parents had gone through something similar. It also made me realize that maybe I wasn't being as unreasonable as my husband made me feel. Later that evening, my husband came home. We had a long talk. I told him about the conversation I had with my mother and how it made me feel. He seemed to soften a bit and admitted that he hadn't considered how important this was to me. He apologized for being dismissive and said he would think about it more. It was a small step, but it felt like progress. The following day, we went to a prenatal class together. It was supposed to be a bonding experience, but it ended up being more stressful than anything. During one of the exercises, we had to write down our hopes and dreams for our baby. I wrote about wanting her to have a connection to both of our cultures, while my husband wrote about wanting her to be strong and independent. When we shared our answers, it became clear that we had very different visions for our child's future. It was eye-opening and a bit scary. I started to wonder if we were really on the same page about anything. After the class, we went out for lunch, and the conversation turned to our families. My husband started talking about his childhood and how his parents had always been very strict. He said he wanted to be different and give our child more freedom. This was the first time he had opened up about his upbringing, and it made me see him in a new light. I realized that his insistence on the last name might be tied to his desire to break away from his parents' control. It made me feel more empathetic towards him, but it also made me more determined to find a compromise. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about our conversation and what it meant for our future. I decided to write a letter to my husband, explaining my feelings in detail. I poured my heart out, telling him how much it meant to me for our baby to have a connection to my family. I also acknowledged his feelings and tried to find a middle ground. I left the letter on his pillow and went to bed, hoping it would make a difference. The next morning, my husband read the letter and came to talk to me. He said he appreciated my honesty and that he was willing to consider including my last name as a second middle name. It was a huge relief, and I felt like we were finally making progress. We agreed to take some time to think about it and revisit the conversation in a few days. In the meantime, I started to reflect on my own upbringing and what it meant to me. I remembered how proud my mother was of her heritage and how she always made sure I knew where I came from. It made me realize that I wanted the same for my daughter. I wanted her to know both sides of her family and to feel connected to both cultures. This realization gave me the strength to keep pushing for a compromise. Over the next few days, my husband and I continued to talk about our hopes and dreams for our baby. We started to find more common ground and to understand each other's perspectives better. It wasn't easy, but it felt like we were finally working together as a team. One evening, we were sitting on the couch, and my husband started telling me about his grandmother. He said she was the one person in his family who had always supported him, no matter what. He told me how she had encouraged him to follow his dreams and to be true to himself. Hearing this made me realize that he had his own reasons for wanting to honor his family's traditions. It wasn't just about control, it was about love and respect. This conversation brought us even closer, and we started to feel more united in our decision-making. We agreed that our baby's name should reflect both of our families, and that we would find a way to make it work. It was a turning point for us, and it made me feel more hopeful about our future. In the end, we decided to give our baby my last name as a second middle name. It felt like the right compromise, and it made both of us happy. We still have a lot to figure out, but it feels like we're on the right track. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.